Hello, it's Leslie here. I thought I would do a video about the most watched bicycles on eBay. I haven't seen a video like this on YouTube, so I thought it would be fun. But actually I should say that these are some of the most watched. They're not all the most watched, but to make it more interesting, these are some of them. So we'll start off with this bike here. It has 10 watches. This is really the bike that started at all. This is one of the first production carbon frame bikes, the Kestrel 4000. So this bike has 10 watches. It's a pretty nice bike. Next up, this Calfee bamboo road bike I found on eBay. It looks a very nice bike. Very clean. Of course, Calfee has been around a long time, just like Kestrel. So that has 22 watches, you can see there. Next up is going to be another Kestrel bike. This is the KM40 Triathlon bike. This particular one has 34 people watching it. This is a very nice bike. I actually lusted after this one and couldn't really decide whether to get this one or the 500. I ended up getting the 500, not this one, because it was road bike specific, not triathlon geometry. So there's that one, very nice. Gotta remember though, that's from like the 90s, early 2000s, so that's way ahead of its time. So that has 34 watches. Interesting. So it surprises me that some of the most watched bikes are actually vintage bikes. Then I came across this one just today. It's a GT titanium frame bike. Lightning. They also have the Saizang or something like that it's called. But this one has a blue theme going. I personally would have broken this down, because the amount of people that are going to want a blue bike, I don't think, I probably would have been better to sell this as parts. But anyway, so, very nice. This has on the M950 XTR components. I had the model before that with the M900. I had an M900 and the M950 shift levers on my particular bike, because they were the first V-brake levers, I think. The M900s being cantilevers. Yeah, it's a very nice bike, but I'm not a fan of like the blue, but hey. I'm a big fan of GT bikes, by the way. I had a GT Timberline, which is all I could afford at the time. So next up, so that had 44 watches, is getting a bit crazy. Next up is this beautiful looking Corima, and it says it's a Chris Boardman replica Shimano Jura Ace with 62 people watching it. I like the photos in this one too, with the concrete wall. I think he's going to be a bit too far with the blur though, the background, like the bokeh. And would have liked to see slightly more depth of field. But it's a beautiful bike, look at it. It's another brand I really like. I've picked these bikes because these are some of my favourite brands as well, not just because there's people watching them, or not. Yeah, so that says 62 watches. Next up, this Ibis Zacbo full sus mountain bike. I remember these coming onto the scene, and there was also the bow tie, which I wanted at the time, but could never afford it. But I never owned one. This is the one with this made of steel. And how many watches has that got? 75 people watching it. It's pretty nice. This has the Jura Ace. I had those. My first ever suspension forks. They look very familiar to me. And I think they're elastomer. And Ibis. I had an Ibis stem as well when I was back in the day. I had an Ibis titanium stem, which I then sold on eBay. Some lucky person has my stem. Ibis were nice because they used to have really polished welds and stuff like that on their titanium bikes and stems. I think that's all I could afford was the stem. So Ibis, and see, it's a big thing when they went carbon. That was a big shock for me. Yeah, interesting. 75 people. This one I've been watching. This is the first one I decided to start doing this video because I've been watching this bike for a long time. This is a triathlon bike with 650c size wheels. I happen to own a bike with 650c size wheels, the Kestrel. So they're getting superseded now. So anyway, this bike, the asking price is 20,000 bucks, 30,000 Australian bucks. Now I actually think because of the history and the heritage of this, like it's probably worth it. I'm surprised it hasn't sold because just look at it. It's a real amazing bike, this one, and I think it probably is worth. It's not fair that some paintings are worth $100 million and this bike is no one's buying it for even 20,000 bucks. I mean, it's like a huge. This is an iconic bike from those days, and they weren't very popular. Like Kestrels were a bit more popular, so these are rarer anyway. So this one, $20,000, and how many watches did it have? 82. One of those is me. I'm watching it because just to see whether it sells. I think the thing with this bike though, it has a very short description, which I'll show you. The listing has a very short description, and this is with the aluminium fork as well, and some parts are very nice. I like the orange theme actually on this bike. I really do. I really think this is an amazing looking bike, this one. It has zip cranks, carbon, slightly older components. I think it's Shimano, what is it? 600 or something? Ultegra? Oh, I can't see. I'll have to fix that zoom level in a minute. Zip carbon wheels. Anyway, I think it's a pretty special bike, special part of history. 20 grand. It's interesting to know whether that bike will actually sell or not. I haven't actually hung up my bikes yet. I've read somewhere not to hang up your bike because you'll never ride it again and everything as you get older. So I refuse to hang up my bikes. So there's that one. Let me zoom it back. Yeah, 82. Now, if you look at it's just such a short description. I think he needs to really state why he's selling it, why he bought the parts, make a bit of story, and why he originally bought the bike. For example, I'd be interested to know why did he buy this bike and not the Kestrel, for example, or a Klein or Cannondale or one of the others. Why did he like this one? And I'd also like to know why did he choose the parts on here? Why an orange theme, maybe even? Why he's selling it? Not just put. This is basically the minimum you could put. Anyway, local pickup only, so maybe that's one reason why it hasn't sold. Anyway, let's move on. This one here, mountain cycle, 2,000 pounds, 100 watches on it. You know, this is one of the bikes that started it all with San Andreas mountain cycle. In the 90s, I can remember these guys mountain cycle. I actually own a mountain cycle now. I never thought I would because I didn't really like the original San Andreas. I thought it was very ugly. But I've changed my mind. I own one of the downhill ones. This particular one, I mean, he's selling it with a new swing arm. I would have put the new swing arm on it. And but it's very nice bike. The thing that I think with these bikes is they have such a history to them. You know, mountain cycle was the first one that had the long travel hydraulic brakes, or disc brakes rather, and they were the ones that were like 10 years ahead of everyone else, or more even, you know, like feels like 20 years even, because at that time they had just hardtails and stuff like that, and full suspension bikes were just coming out. None of them had disc brakes. Everybody was still on like cantilevers and shit like that. So this bike, it turns heads. Anyway, I'm surprised someone hasn't bought that one with over 100 people watching it. Yeah. Then there's this one here, 139 watches. I just found this today. Brooklyn. I'm not really familiar with this brand, but it's a downhill one. You can kind of tell he lives in a downhill area, can't you? So this was fully custom, I think. I don't know too much about this brand at all. So I have the Saint brakes, the model before this, the 4 bolts holding them all together, and looks very nice. So some of the more unique bikes are very sought after. I don't have any Kleins on this list, sorry. Monkey bar. I like those Eastern monkey bars. Now Eastern's not making mountain bike handles anymore. I notice that's a shocker when they stopped making mountain bike handlebars, man, carbon bars. So that one there, 6,000 American dollars, 9,000 Australian dollars. Next up, 240 which is this 52-inch penny farthing. So there you go. And speaking of penny farthings, I'd like to see Sam Pilgrim sending it with a penny farthing. I think that'd be classic. I've mentioned it in the comments. I hope he gets a hold of a penny farthing one day and goes over some jumps or something. 244 watches for this bike. It's crazy. Look at the pedals on it. 244 watches, man. Second last, I think this one is this Mark Cavendish S-Works McLaren Venge. That's enough of a name. Specialized. 306 watches. This is the most modern bike on the list so far. Well, it is. So I can't warm to Specialized anymore because they were around in the back in the day, but they weren't as popular as GT and Cannondale back in the day. So, even has the power meter on it. Jura Ace. I'm more of a Campagnolo man now. So there's that one with, what are they? What wheels are they? Head carbon rims. 15,000 pounds, 25,000 Australian dollars for that bike. 306 people watching it. And last but not least, I found this bike last week. A 1987 GT Performer 20-inch lavender, new in box, never assembled, new old stock BMX. I think this is classic. The asking price, $18,000, 27 grand Australian, 328 watches. Look at it. It's just a classic. The way it's just the box it came in. It's literally the box it came in. Never been assembled. Now these bikes, I think they were only worth $330 when they were new. So it'll be interesting to see whether he gets this price or not. But people get very nostalgic as they get older. I never understood that about vintage and retro stuff. I always thought it was better to get more modern stuff. But as I've grown older, I have become more nostalgic, it's true. I like the colour of this bike. I don't know if it's worth that much because the asking price in 30 years ago was not in the thousands of dollars. Made in Japan wheel rims. Oops. I think it's good that everything's still in its like plastic wrapping. It's quite strange seeing it. It's like a time warp. Look at it, a time warp bike. That's a classic. Although made in Taiwan. Yeah. Back when things made in Taiwan were very good. With that horrible little gold sticker. So there you go. That's the most watched bike that I think is very interesting. There are other more watched bikes, but they're not that special. There might be e-bikes and they're just modern things. So I think these are some of the more special bikes that people are looking at. Funnily enough, there's this one here. This is one of the most watched things. 541 watches for this part here. Anyway, that's all I have time for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Bye.